Alright, we're working underneath this 2010 Nissan Rogue S all-wheel drive. This is the front driver's side wheel for reference. We're going to do a CVT spill and fill. We've already had the pan off about a month ago and drained all the fluid out and cleaned up the magnets and put it all back together. I'm going to do one more flush just so we can get any remaining fluid out that may not have come out, that was still within the torque converter and throughout the valve body and the rest of the transmission. So if you come out from the driver's side wheel and you look in here where I have the light shining, right here is the drain plug. Here's your exhaust in the middle for reference. It is a 19mm. So I'm going to try to get you set up so you can see, and then we'll go ahead and show you how to drain that. Okay, we got the camera in a good spot. We're going to go ahead under here. I got a 19mm, and I thought I had this on loosen on a ratchet. Sometimes these can be a little tight. I have to double hand it. Now I did not put it on ramps, so I want to keep it as level as possible so I can get an accurate measurement of how much needs to come out of here. I'm still not loose. There we go. And it is warmed up, so it is going to come out pretty fast. Got some gloves on here. There we go. Let that drain out. Typically it takes about 4.5 to 5 quarts when you just do a spill and fill like this. So we're going to measure it and see how much is in it, and then see how much comes out, and then once I see how much comes out, then I'll be able to go ahead in and put back in what came out. Those look a little milky. Could be just the LED light I have shining on there too. Okay. There we go. So we're going to let that drain for a few minutes, and we're going to go back up top. I'm going to show you some stuff up there. I'm also going to show you how to prep the drain plug too. So we're going to go for a ride up top here. Now I should have mentioned before doing this, it is a good idea to first pop this. This is, if you look on the driver's side here, there's a driver's side headlight. You come in. This is the dipstick for the CVT fluid, and there's a little spring notch. This one's broken off. There's a little notch in there that latches down onto there, and if you take a little flathead screwdriver and push it in there, you can pop this loose, and then just take it and turn it around the other way during the time that you're servicing it. So this is, you want to make sure, you should check to make sure this obviously comes out before you start draining it. I should have mentioned that, just because for obvious reasons, if you can't get this out, you're not going to be able to refill your CVT fluid. So we're just going to leave that like it is, and it's a good idea to check everything else out while you're under there. You know, check your CV boots, you know, things like that. Make sure there's no damage to anything. It's a good time while you're under there to check everything. Take it back down here. Looks like it's still draining a little bit. Starting to slow up a little bit. So while we're down here, take a look there. CV boot looks good there. That's good. And the inner one, let's see if I can get around here. There we go. The other one's a little harder to see. I don't see any grease or anything. I'll go under and examine a little closer, just so you know, make sure there's nothing broken under here. So this here, I'll get you the mileage before the end of the video. I'll let you know what that is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drain that, prep the drain plug. So I'm going to stop you, and then we're going to go up top and I'll show you how to get the drain plug ready. Alright, we got the drain plug here. We're going to use this Dorman part number here. I found works out well. That's 097-134. That's by Dorman. And these little crush copper washers, looks like I could get more, it's my last two, also work on your oil drain plug. I found they also seem to fit the CVT plug, or drain plug. That's kind of what they look like there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that on there. Screw on there. It's hard to do with gloves on. Let that roll in there. Kind of twists on with the threads a little bit. Okay. So that's what it should look like. You also want to make sure that when you get underneath there that the old one isn't stuck to the bottom of the transmission pan, because if it is, you could double washer it, which could create a leak. So that's something to look for when you're down there. We're going to go back down and put this back in. Okay, we're back under here. Waiting for this to finish draining. That's pretty much as much out of there as I'm really worried about getting out. That's quite a bit out of there. So still is a steady drain, but there's a lot inside of the transmission. It's funny how when I start making these videos, there's nobody around for miles, and as soon as I start recording, every neighbor and screaming child decides to come outside. Kind of funny how that works. So, still a bit coming out of there, but I'm going to grab my screwdriver while I'm under here, and it's a little flathead. Just make sure that there's no, I don't think there's one on there, but just making sure. I don't think there's one on there. Doesn't feel like it. I actually may, because this was not leaking prior. I'm hesitant if I should put this crush washer on there, because there wasn't one on there, and I don't believe this fluid was ever changed before me, and it wasn't on there last time either. I'll put it on there. It should be okay. So that should be enough. Like I said, I mean, there's still going to be a lot of residual inside there anyway, but we're going to go ahead and cork this up, and that should be a good bit of it. I mean, that's probably almost 5 quarts right there. Alright, we're going to start tightening that down like so. Grab my 19 millimeter. I'll go ahead and just dab this up so I'm not covered in it. I'm going to push this pan over, make us some room to get some leverage in there. Like so. I'm sure there is torque specs online for this. I just kind of use my mind, not my muscle on this situation. So I like to support the wrench when I do it here so it doesn't round. There we go. Not super tight, but you want it tight enough that it's not going to come loose on you, because you don't want to have that happen. Now I'm going to clean this up real quick here with some brake clean, just so that way if it is leaking after this, I'll be able to tell. Clean this up a little bit. Now this has undercoating on this car, a lot of undercoating, so it might be what you're seeing. It looks like an oil residue coming off. That's actually undercoating coming off from the brake clean solvent. Alright, so that should be good. I feel confident in that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back up top and get a clean funnel, and with the clean funnel we're going to start filling up the CVT fluid after we measure what came out, of course. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to fill this up with this gallon jug here, just so we can get a good measurement of what came out. Now, typically the CVT fluid in this is supposed to be green, but because we use the Castrol fluid, the aftermarket, which I don't see a problem doing because I've gotten away with it now in my vehicle with no problems. We're going to use a Castrol CVT Smooth Dry. Alright, so let's see. So that's about filled. I would say, it's hard to say with the measurements on here, so we definitely have, I would say about, that's about 4.5 to almost 5 quarts. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put in the 4 quarts, and once we put that 4 quarts in, then we will check it and run it through the gears, make sure it's on operating temperature. And once we know for sure that it's at operating temperature, then we'll check it and see if we have to add more. What I'm doing is cleaning out the funnel here, and a clean rag and brake clean, because you definitely don't want anything going down in that CVT transmission to ruin any transmission. So, so now what we're going to do is funnel down in the, they call it the charge tube, which is also where the dipstick goes. So that looks nice and clean. Put that down in there. And then if you want to hang out there for a minute, I'm going to grab a couple quarts here of the fluid. So like I said, we can definitely get away with dumping the 4 quarts in. And this is what we're choosing to use here. This is the Castrol Transmax CVT smooth drive technology, and it is suitable for NS2, which is what this transmission requires. So we'll go ahead and just start filling that up there. You able to see okay? I didn't know if there was enough light. Now the fluid that was in it only had slightly over 50,000, maybe 53 or 54,000 miles. I'd have to go back and look at the last time that I changed it, which was only about a month ago. I think what happened was that someone had towed with this vehicle, and my word of advice is if you have a CVT transmission, do not tow. They're not designed for towing. They're push belt driven, and they're designed for fuel economy, and they're not designed for towing. This transmission was having a lot of whining, especially once it would get hot, and it almost felt like it was going into a limp mode, because it would lose slight power when accelerating up hills. As soon as I changed the transmission CVT fluid in it last month, all of that noise went away. Now there is still a strange jerking motion where it looks like it actually does what feels like a software shift, because obviously continuously variating transmissions obviously don't shift because they don't have gears in them. Some of the newer ones kind of simulate shifts and have some additional clutches in them, so they can have like what they feel like shifts, but they're really not. With this older CVT, a lot of times if you're getting a jerk or something, that could mean that you need a software update. So now that we're doing this second change on here, and you could see how milky and dirty that fluid looked that came out of here, I'm hoping now that we're doing another change only a month later of the fluid, that it will hopefully possibly cure that strange jerking motion when you start to accelerate up especially up on an incline or up a hill. It acts like it's shifting, but obviously it's not. So sort of slides and then re-catches, and so it accelerates with a high RPM, and then it'll drop down and then jerk back up to a high RPM again when it's supposed to be staying at a high RPM. So I personally think it needs a software update. Unfortunately though, when you go to Nissan dealerships, most of them know less about the car than you do, which is unfortunate because you spend a lot of money at the dealership, to have them do, professional work, and they don't know anything and they can't tell you anything. Just make sure I didn't, CVT, because these quarts are identical to the regular transmission fluid. I have a couple quarts of the Dexron 3 in the garage. I just want to make sure I wasn't dumping the wrong one in here. So this is almost 4. Like I said, I know I can get away with probably putting 4.5 in here, and then we'll start it up and check it again. You can pretty much buy this fluid anywhere. I know Walmart only carries the Valvoline now, which Valvoline's good too. It's like I said, it's green. So if you are concerned about voiding any kind of warranties on your vehicle, then I suggest sticking with the Nissan fluid that they tell you to use. Or if you want to try to be sneaky, you can use the Valvoline stuff, which the Valvoline stuff is still green, so you might be able to get away with it. And this isn't a full quart, this is about 3/4 of a quart, so. Alright, so now that that's at that level, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start it, and while it's running, I'm going to let it warm up and try to get it to operating temperature here. I don't know what I did with the other cap. The fluid. You see it anywhere? Oh, here it is. Going bananas here. We'll get it started up and let it warm up to operating temperature here. And also check for leaks below, so we'll do that now. And like I said, it was only a month ago that we did this fluid change in it, so are the keys still in here? Or do you have them?
Just cut this part out.
Yeah. What I'm doing is I'm just running it through the gears. The current mileage is 52,934. How many miles would you say you've driven since the last time you changed it? Just a guesstimation.
A couple hundred, maybe.
Yeah. So it's probably between 300 and 500 miles you'd say you've driven. We're just going to let that run and let it get up to operating temperature here, and that way we can get an accurate measurement on the fluid. I ran it down all through the gears, the drive, park, reverse, neutral, drive, to kind of get it cycling through the transmission there. And then what I'll do is let that circulate for a minute. I'm going to also check under here real quick for leaks, make sure that that drain plug I put back in goes in. Everything looks good under there, no leaks. So, we'll cut off for a minute here, and I'll pick back up here in just a second once we do the final fluid check and show you how to read the dipstick. Okay, so we let it warm up. It's been idling for a while now. I've been working on cleaning up my mess. So I got the dipstick here. We're going to run that back down in the charge tube. Like I said, make sure this is towards the back so it doesn't click in on you. You don't want to click it in until you're actually done. And what we're looking for is the fluid level on here, which the light's probably going to wash it out, but it has to be between these two notches. So I'm actually going to add a little bit more, probably another 1/4 of a quart to it, and that should put us to where it needs to be. Now you don't want to overfill it, but you also don't want to underfill it. It has to be kind of just right. Nissan actually uses a consult tube, like a diagnostics computer, to properly check the fluid level at the right temperature. So we'll let that run down in there, give it just for good measure an extra little whoop, and then we're going to check it again. It takes a minute for that to run down the tube there, the charge tube. So sometimes you can get an inaccurate reading sometimes whenever it's still going down the tube. Your dipstick might actually pick it up and not give you the right reading. Now you're not actually supposed to use these cloths that I'm using. I would recommend using like the blue towelettes, because they leave a fuzz which can get in your transmission and actually clog some of the solenoids and the little screens. Now that's why, if you notice, every time I wipe it with that, I go back over my hands and inspect it to make sure there's no lint. I just don't have any of those blue towelettes to check it. That should be good. Let's go ahead and run it down again. And Well, it's really hard for me to even see. Yeah, I might have to let it run for a little longer. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the camera for a second. We're going to let it run a little longer just so more of that fluid can get down the tube, the charge tube, because right now I'm not getting an accurate reading. And then we'll check it one more time. Okay, so I went ahead and let it drain down. Now, it's hard to see in the dark in this bright light, but it is at the very, very, very tip top of that little notch right there. It's actually probably slightly higher than it needs to be. But I'm actually okay with that level. So I'm going to check it again in a few days and see where it's at. But for now, we're going to go ahead and click it back in. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the this is a 2010 Nissan Rogue with the 2.5 4-cylinder with the CVT transmission. I'm sorry, it's a 2012. I thought it was a 2010. So the owner here, Mr. Justin, the camera guy, just informed me that it's a 2012. Why do you think this was a 2010? So you mean to tell me I've been buying parts for a 2010 now? For how long? No, I'm just kidding.
Whoopsie.
No, I knew it was a 2012. For some reason, I thought it was a 2010 today. So yeah, 2012 Nissan Rogue. It has relatively low mileage on it, and we picked it up used about 3 years ago, and we had 38,000 on it, I believe. Now has 52 and some change on it. The only reason why I changed the fluid as I did, because in the perfect world, it would just be about due now for the change. The problem with that is that somebody had towed with this vehicle, and I think what happened was they actually may have caused some premature wear to the transmission and ruined the fluid. Basically, was no longer, it probably overheated the fluid and ruined the fluid is what it did. So it was getting a lot of whining. Since we changed it last time, there hasn't been any more whining. So now that we've changed it again, I'm going to be interested to see how much better it performs. And like I said, this is the second drain. The first one we did not record. That's where I actually took the pan off, cleaned out the pan to get rid of any of the friction material, as well as clean the magnets, made sure it had a good seal around the pan gasket. So this is actually the second change that did the first one a month ago. So I hope this helps somebody. Like I said, 2012 Nissan Rogue, and has the 2.5 CVT. And if you like this video, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.